just occurred to me that I talked to the other folks in the committee, you know, that I've never seen anyone really talk about the maker community, you know, in terms of its history and stuff. And I figured we ought to do something like that. So that's what we're doing here today. Is we're calling a partial history of makers in Silicon Valley. And you know, I know it's true of some of the people here too. Is that there's a lot of us who came to this area. We're born and raised in other places, but we came here because of our interest in technology, because we like to take things apart, we tried to put them together again, you know, and we're interested in technology and the way it works. It's kind of like the technology backup for a lot of folks in the U.S. and around the world. What we've got here is, I think, a really interesting community of people who've been outstanding pioneers and leaders in, if you will, the maker community, and of people doing things themselves, and of citizens embracing technology. Before I forget it, I know you have your flyers here. There apparently is a new, speaking of this, there's a new makerspace opening here. There's some flyers over there, and the maker coordinator is back there, right? So, Don, yeah.
My name is Don. It's called Maker Nexus. We're on Caribbean Drive in Sunnyvale. And we have a grand opening on Saturday, October 26th, so you're all welcome to come. It's a full maker shop with laser printers, laser cutters, 3D printers, full wood shop, metal shop, shop bots, workbenches, textiles,
All kinds of fun
all
toys.
kinds of classes for
Yeah.
kids and adults. And we have community rooms if you need to have a meeting like this. We have 3 rooms that are available for free. And we have an off-site meeting from the company.
It's nonprofit.
And it is not.
There's some flyers on it with the dress and all that.
I'd be very happy to promote that for you.
Okay.
I
Oh,
can give
yeah,
you my
right.
card. You send me a couple paragraphs, I'll send it out to many people.
Thank you. And maybe asking for meeting space.
So, with that, and by the way, that's also in the spirit, I think, of the whole place here, is people letting each other know about stuff that's going on. There's been a lot of that history. We have 4 folks, I think, that are representing some really interesting aspects of the maker community and, you know, human technology, you know, citizen technology, if you will. Lee Felsenstein is right here. And Lee was one of the founders of the Homebrew Computer Club, of which there were things like Apple Computer spun off from, for example. And, it was one of the early examples of you know, people building stuff and showing what they built to each other, working together. We also have Andrew Kawani. Now Andrew he's right next to me here. He is the current CEO and resurrector of Heathkit.
Yay!
Yeah. And so he's going to talk a little bit to us about Heathkit, what they've done in the past, the history, as well as what they're working on now. We also have on the far end Dale Doherty. Dale founded the Maker Fairs. And, you know, that by itself. And we also have Make Magazine is being resurrected again. He's trying to get Maker Fairs going again. There's those that are going to be happening in other parts of the world. One thing that I think that he mentioned to me is we're not sure if there's going to be a Maker Fair in Silicon Valley next year.
Yep.
So if anybody's got some venue or folks might help to help make something like that happen, provide a place to do it, maybe some money kind of thing, I'm sure Dale would appreciate that. And then we have Camp Peavey now. Camp has been involved in the Home Brew Robotics Club, which owes some kind of an allegiance or descendants from the original Home Brew Computer Club. And so he's been involved in that. I can't remember where I mentioned. It was SBC.
All the maker events.
Yeah.
Maker Fair, Robo Games.
Yeah, and so he brought some of his robots here. With that, I don't want to take up much more of your time here. I want these guys to get a chance to talk. So, Lee, let me see if I can dig your stuff up here first.
Title of this talk should be, You Can't Be Serious. Well, everybody knows that you have to spend 16 to 18 years in school, study a lot of math, and then you go get your degree or degrees, and now you're ready to start. And then you spend several years learning what you're supposed to know, and on you go. And then eventually, by the time you die, you may, in fact, be able to work on something that's interesting and important. Sorry, a lot of us didn't do that. I started at age 11 and with Crystal Radio, not at EQ, unfortunately. But in Philadelphia, which was the center of the computer industry that someone has recently written that it should have been called Vacuum Tube Valley. And my instructor in the electronics club was an engineer at Univac, and we did get to come in at night and watch him play with the console, not that he could explain it. And in 1959, my older brother started a computer club in high school, and I was forced to be the chief engineer. It turns out that the flip-flops we were building with 6SN7 vacuum tubes worked pretty well. The trouble is, nobody told us that you had to make sure your inputs were clean. Your pulses were not going diddle. And so they worked about 50% of the time. After which point I swore off digital electronics. I figured any little bit of noise there, and the whole thing crashed. So I went on in analog for 10 years. Okay. Now, one thing you run into when you're approaching it from that standpoint is that done properly, technical development is fun. I'm not going to change it. I need to read it to remind myself that one of the books I had as a kid was the history of GE Labs, and they talked about Irving Langmuir, who was the Nobel-winning chemist, who was the head of GE Labs, and he would go around and ask the researchers, "Are you having fun?" And everybody wanted to tell him what their problems were. And he said, no, I'm not asking that. Are you having fun? Because if you're not having fun, you're not doing your best work. Well, I was encouraged by that. And I remember a point I was in college at Berkeley at that point during the summer, and I got a copy of one of the electronics magazines, and they had this solid state Class D amplifier in there, audio amplifier, and I decided, would I be able to lay this circuit out within a 3x5 footprint? And I began to sit at my table there and work at it, and eventually I sort of came to. The sun had set, and then I decided, oh, well, I guess I'd better get up. I started to rise from my chair and found I was stuck to the chair, the leatherette on the seat. And that's a situation where you've entered the flow state. Fortunately, the name of the state is much shorter than the name of the fellow who wrote about it. I call it 6 cents Mihaly. But there's a similarity between that and being in the zone in the athletic domain, as I understand it. Now, I'm no athlete, and more is the pity, because apparently when I recently spoke in St. Petersburg, I heard a talk by a Russian sociologist, I think, who had studied the Akademgorodok cities. These were the academic cities in Russia. Whole cities of nerds. And they Komsomol, the youth organizations, found out that all of the kids, all of the geek kids were heavily into sports. You don't do that here, but that's very interesting here, because I had a couple of decades before had the sudden realization that I, who considered myself, having no connection with sports, was actually engaged in sport. It was technological sport, which, you're not doing it for money. Sport is universal. It even extends to many species of animals. And so the idea of professional sports is some strange concoction that we've cooked up recently. Most of the time, it's just trying to see if you can do what you think you maybe can do, but haven't done. And trying to go for that and can get it and to experience virtuosity. You can, if you want, try to gain social points for it. Or it can be done just as a solitary exercise, but it's sport. And I had to realize that I've been doing sport all along. Now, personal computers. We come down to the 1970s or so. Actually, by that time, time sharing had been in operation for a decade. The first time sharing system was developed in, I believe, no. BASIC was developed in 1965. Time sharing came a bit later, around 1970. And recently I was asked to talk about the connection between time sharing and personal computers and said, well, there is no connection. Then I thought about it and I realized, no, that's not true at all. In fact, it's time sharing was a personal computer experience. We just didn't have the hardware to do it on one little box. And so, untold numbers of people, so if anybody wants to try to make an estimate, you're welcome to it, I'd love to know. Had gone through the experience of learning on a time sharing system and interacting with a computer on a personal level. That, I contend, set up the market for the personal computer. And so when the 8080 microprocessor came out, which was really the first one that had a prayer of being a, quote, computer, unquote. I know that an 8008 based system had been built by, I guess it must have been a professor and graduate students at Sacramento State University. And this has been displayed, was asked about it. I said, look what it took to make it. There's a lot of stuff in there. In 88, a lot more of that, most of that stuff went inside that chip. So by 1974 or so, there was the chip, and that appeared as the Altair 8800, a very poorly designed, if I may say so. And fortunately poorly designed. We'll get to that in just a second. Nominal computer, which has had a lot of empty space in it. 2 circuit boards, 1 4-slot backplane with space for 3 more of these, 3 more such 4 slots. And it was advertised as a mini computer for under $400, and a lot of people, the roof fell in when they advertised that. And it's all well known. They estimated maybe they could sell 200 of them and make their money back. They got, the first few days, they got 500 orders. So, the rush was on, and because of the fact that you couldn't plug anything into it, you needed a card circuit board to plug the I/O into it, and they weren't making those cards. So everybody who got interested decided, a lot of them decided, I can make a card that'll plug into it. So these little third party, I sort of tripped over that phrase because it's often used in reference to IBM, and this is the other end of the scale. So maybe it's a 0.03 party or something. Garage industry started up, and I was involved with one of them. I did some work. Computer clubs, of course, appeared at that point because when you bought one of these things, you bought the kit, and you went through all the tribulations of assembling it, you found out you had something to exercise, I don't know, 35 instructions in machine language, and that's it. I don't think the number's correct, but whatever it was built into the 8080, that was what you were stuck with. But it didn't behave like a time-sharing system. Where's the BASIC? I want a computer, and that means to me BASIC. Cue the Home Brew Computer Club. So in 1975, March 5th, a fellow who was actually, his profession would be listed as radical pacifist activist, Fred Moore, who had been hanging around the personal computer of the computer underground in Menlo Park, the community computer center, or which I call the People's Pachinko Parlor. It was a room about the third of the size of this room with a couple of teletypes in it, and kids could come in and for 50 cents an hour use the terminals on a time-sharing service, running basic games. And so it helped potlucks and so on. It attracted a rabid crew of people who came down from Xerox PARC and Stanford, artificial intelligence and so forth, just to talk about whenever it is we have personal computers, what are they going to be like? Fred hung around and actually was there all day collecting names and contact information of people who came in the door. And he mailed out to that list an invitation to a computer hobbyist get-together. Because the first Altair to hit the area had arrived, it was being sent to some of these nascent publications for review. And we had it there in that meeting. We also had someone, Steve Donford, who had actually ordered one of those and had, when the delivery did not happen immediately, he drove down to Albuquerque and chatted with them. He's very good at that, and came back to report on what was there, what the company was like, and what's going on. We also had a fellow named Steve Wozniak, who had already been designing little terminals, TV typewriters, as they were called, and 30 people were there, and I was there. I was one of the 30. I'm the one who suggested we just go around the room and talk one at a time about why you're here, what you're interested in, what you've got, if you've got anything, what you need, if you needed something. And so we did that. We decided to meet every 2 weeks. And after on the third session, it had grown to the point where it was held in the auditorium of an alternative school, private school, elementary school. And while one of our number was trying to lecture earnestly on the computer science from the auditorium, half the audience was out in the lobby trying to meet each other. And I said to myself, we've got to bring this process into meeting, which I was able to do the next meeting, because then I was able to take over the running of the meetings and impose my ideas on them, at least in terms of structure. Also at the third meeting, Dontier, who had by that time received his Altair, brought it in, not telling anyone what to expect, entered a program on the front panel switches, which is the only way you could enter it, and set up a VHF weather radio, and said, wait, push the go button, and it began to play Fool on the Hill through the radio from the radio frequency noise that was generated, suitably modulated by the program. And this to me was a significant event because, number one, there was no money in it. Nobody had asked him to do it. He was showing off, and it worked, and it did something that really nobody had ever done before. At the end of the score, it then switched into playing Daisy. Daisy, which everyone knew really there was the first piece of music ever played on a computer in 1957, but it sure wasn't played through a radio. Okay, Homebrew Club. We have the structure of it began it with announcements for the newcomers as to what to expect. And then if there was a period when we had a lecture, and somebody else was organizing this, and I was just told when I came in, you know, he's going to give a lecture and so forth. And if the person who didn't show up to give the lecture, what I would do from the front was to say, okay, here's the topic of the lecture. Does anyone here know anything about it? And about three hands would go up, and I would call on them in turn, and they would give some fact that they knew, and this would knock loose other responses. No, that's not right. Here, this is more nearly right. And on we went, and in half an hour, which was the time allocated for the lecture, we were always able to put together as good a lectures as you could have organized. Now, it helps. This was being held in the Stanford Linear Accelerator Center, the epicenter of Silicon Valley. You know, maybe you can't do that just anywhere. Then we would have the mapping session. And that's where one person at a time would stand up. And when they raise their hands, I point to them with a blackboard pointer. And you've seen that pointer turn up in a number of these TV representations of the Homebrew Club. Because everything else they had to say about it was wrong. The pointer was correct. My rule was stand up when you talk so people can see you, identify you. And I almost asked this gentleman, hey, stand up. Well, it's not my place to do that here.
You go out and set it o'clock and turn it back.
Oh, okay. The automatic systems, yeah. And so it needs resources, strange and interesting facts, and so forth, anything you wanted to say, except if you wanted to get into the substance of it, I would stop you. And I learned the stagecraft to do that with. But the whole point is that people could exchange secondary information in that session, so you knew who it was, who you wanted to talk to. People would always come up to me afterwards and say, who was it that said this or that? In my introduction, I told them, don't do this, because I won't know. Watch and figure out who it is. Then we had the random access session. Judging when to call that was very interesting. You could tell the room getting more and more tense. So finally I declare it, and everybody poured out to the floor and just talked with each other. The few times that Steve Jobs appeared there, he would stand around with Steve Wozniak, who was there at every meeting, and not say anything. And the first time he was there, I saw him darting frantically about the room with an urgent look on his face, trying to listen to every conversation, which was, of course, impossible. In 1978, on the third anniversary, we counted up and found that 37 companies that we could identify had formed out of the Homebrew Club. Most of them were little tiny companies that come and gone. But then there was Apple, and there was InfoWorld, which came out of the Silicon Gulch Gazette that Jim Warren started. Jim Warren was our gossip monger. There was a lot of development was going on about tiny basics. So you want a basic, okay, basic is not a simple program. But there was people there who could find ways to make it simple and small and so forth. And Lee Chen Wang, a physicist, was working on that and developed one, and Tom Pittman was another who had done it. So this development was going on. We were exchanging and talking about it. And then the Altair, the Mitzmobile, this was the name of the company. They brought an Altair to town, and they showed it around in Ricky's Hyatt House and other places. So they had it in an RV. And when they were here, the paper tape with one copy of their basic disappeared. We don't know how, but another number was handed that tape the next day and asked to turn out some copies, and he had the high-speed tape duplication equipment. These tapes were then handed out at the next meeting on the grounds, bring back more than you take, because anyone with a teletype ASR could be able to reproduce it. So this was the theft on Microsoft Basic, which resulted in a nasty letter to us all by Bill Gates. And we laughed that off because one of the things they claimed was, we used almost $40,000 worth of computer time. Yeah, we all knew that was fake. Nobody ever paid for computer time. In fact, by someone, and picked up by someone else. So the effects of which were, Microsoft Basic became the standard basic. So that when Fairchild, I believe it was Fairchild, said, we're going to introduce a new microcomputer chip, what's the standard basic? Everybody said Microsoft. And in fact, while Microsoft got hardly any money from their retail sales, their wholesale business started at that point, and they've done rather well. Also, in fact, was the development of Tiny Basic stopped because the market had been saturated with Microsoft Basic. And I think that when it came time to introduce Internet Explorer, Bill Gates remembered this. He used the same technique. Okay. We shut down the club in 1986. By 84 or sometime, it had become the same old faces in a tiny auditorium, and really the development had moved out, as it should have, to user groups and beyond. But we had an effect, a significant effect here. Oh, I didn't tell you that in the 1978, the room held 275 people. The mailing list was 3,500 names long. And it made, you really couldn't get on the mailing list unless you went to the meeting, so there's been a tremendous churn of people through it. So this is an experience that has had a significant effect. And on we go, let's talk about more.
Okay, excellent, thank you.